Welcome to the Burial Plot Horror Podcast with Brenda Tolian and Joy Yaley.
Welcome to the Burial Plot, where we drag some of the best horror creatives out of their caves and onto the airwaves for your listening pleasure. I'm Joy Yaley, and I'm joined by my co-host and fellow dark creative, Brenda Tolian. Today, we are very honored to be joined by the prolific and talented Amy Grech. Amy has sold over 100 stories to various anthologies and magazines, including A New York State of Fright, Apex Magazine, Dead Harvest, Flashes of Hope, Gorefest, Hell's Heart, Hell's Highway, Hell's Mall, Needle Magazine, Punk Noir Magazine, Scare You to Sleep, Tales from the Canyons of the Damned, Tales from the Lake Volume 3, The One That Got Away, Thriller Magazine, and many, many others. Amy, thank you so much for joining us all the way from New York down here into Colorado. Brenda and I are both in tiny little towns here in Colorado, so we're feeling a little bit out-towned today.
Oh, no, not at all. Small towns bring their own charm, and sometimes it's good to get away. Like I'll go away out of the city for the weekend sometimes just to clear my head. But I do love the hustle and bustle of New York City, no doubt about it.
Yeah, I've never been, and I'm not going to lie, I'm a little bit scared of big towns, to be honest with you. They cause me a lot of anxiety. That's why I hide down here in the hills of Colorado. Yeah, it's just too much. It's overstimulation.
Well, that's true.
I had a dog jump out of my car on 44th and Broadway in New York.
My.
That's my big story of New York. And
the dog wanted to see Times Square. Gotta go.
Yeah, we stopped traffic trying to get my dog Dylan back into the car. But yeah.
Well, as long as you got him.
We did.
Yeah.
Thanks to a police officer. Glad to have you on the show, by the way. This is going to be so awesome.
Absolutely. Thank you again.
So, Amy, one of the things about you that strikes me always, and I'm in awe of it, you have an amazing number of publications out there with both horror and crime fiction. Yes. And I was just wondering, as somebody like a writer like me who always struggles with productivity, how do you keep your productivity up? How do you keep that going?
There are a couple of tricks that I've devised over the years. I always carry a little notebook with me, so when I'm riding the subway, whether it's to a client meeting, I'm a freelancer for my day job, or on my way to meet friends. This was more pre-COVID, but now things are starting to open up, so we're starting to go out again, which is awesome. But I'll jot down story ideas in a notebook. And a funny little anecdote about that, really briefly. Back when I had a day job, I don't miss corporate America, but, we've all been there. So I'm furiously jotting down notes because the ride to work is still my time until I would set foot into the office. And so someone on the subway was reading my notes, and it was notes on actually different types of scalpels, because I have a story where a devious doctor uses a scalpel as a murder weapon, but then he gets his just desserts, not to give too much away, but that's the title story in my collection, Rage and Redemption, Alphabet City, which is now out of print. But I'm sort of diverging too much from what I was getting at. So this person who saw my notes gave me the name of an article all about scalpels. And I jotted it down. I kind of smiled because in New York, if you don't know someone, you really usually don't interact the way we're interacting. But it was pretty awesome. What are the odds, right?
That's cool. Was he kind of giving you the side eye, like, man, don't sit too close to this lady?
It was actually when it was really crowded still, the subway, so we were both standing. And he was, I don't know if it was a woman or a man, it was a couple years ago, but whoever it was could read my handwriting, which in and of itself is an impressive feat because I have horrible handwriting.
Thank you.
So besides the notebook, what I'll do is I find for longer works like my novellas, I don't outline per se, but what I do is I keep notes and sort of like stream of consciousness, because for one of my novellas, I was mixing up the last names of two sets of characters, and that's pretty awkward. So to avoid that, I'll use notes, at least for novellas right now. And I always listen to music when I'm writing, unless I'm on a Zoom like we are now, or have a conference call for work. Even when I'm working, it just helps me get into the zone. I just really tune everything else out, and it's a great, exhilarating feeling.
What kind of music do you listen to?
Well, back in the day, remember when computers still had the CD-ROM drive? They don't anymore, but back then I would listen to more alternative stuff like Coldplay and I forget who else. But now I just stream a local radio station here in New York, Z100. So I guess you could call it like the popular stuff that the younger crowd is listening to, and then a couple of oldies thrown in there.
Cool. Yeah, I find I can't write to music that has lyrics because I get too distracted by the lyrics. So
a lot of other writers I know say that as well. Here in New York, the Horror Writers Association, we have a very active New York chapter that includes not just New York City, but also members on Long Island and sort of upstate New York, and Hudson Valley. And before COVID, we New York City folks would meet in a restaurant once a month, and then we used to have readings in real life. Remember those? Although they are coming back.
Yeah.
There's one that I'm going to in Brooklyn next month it's by Randy Dawn, one of our members, and it's at the Ample Hills Creamery in Gowanus section of Brooklyn. So I'm looking forward to that, supporting my fellow writers, although I will be reading there in December, unless we have a snowstorm that day. So.
Is it true? There was different mentions. Do you have a, this is such a nerdy question. Do you have a specific, like when you're writing in a notebook, I had read somewhere that you keep a red notebook where you write your notes.
Yes, you guys do your homework. Yes, I love red, maybe because I write a lot of horror and a lot of crime, but yeah.
I was wondering about that. I have, because I like, well, if I'm not writing on the computer, I like to use like the yellow legal pads, because you can keep on flipping them and stuff. And I never asked you, Joy, if you had a preference on what you write. Nowadays, I use the notes on my iPhone a lot, but I also like those yellow. But yeah, I was like, oh, a red notebook.
We all have our go-tos, right? When it comes to notebooks and also digital is good, like you were saying, using the iPhone app as well.
Yeah.
I have thousands of journals, and each one is for something different. Like I try to keep all of the stuff for one project in a specific journal, or just story ideas in a different journal. But I like the green steno notebooks, that are the pages split down the middle, and you just flip those pages, because I can write a lot of stuff really fast on one page. So I like those.
Oh yeah, those are good too. Totally.
If I can read my handwriting later, that is.
Yeah, I know. I have that problem because so much is digital these days, right?
Yeah, I have the worst handwriting in the world. So it's like, I don't even know what the heck that says. So
you have to decode it first.
Yeah. New adventure there for sure.
Definitely.
So you're keeping all of these notes and things, Amy. What inspires you? What gives you ideas? Is it things you see on the subway, or conversations you overhear at places? What gives you ideas?
Both. The subway, just the city. I mean, the city as a whole is quite a character. Different neighborhoods have different personalities. The East Village, where the story about the doctor takes place, is very artsy, for example. And I have a story in the anthology, The One That Got Away, that is set in the quiet Upper East Side, is one neighborhood. And then in Central Park, which I like to say is a pocket of calm and a whirlwind of chaos, that is New York City. That's a line straight from my story, Cold Comfort, actually. And I'll be reading an excerpt later in our chat from that.
I can't wait for that.
Do you go, I mean, you've lived there for a long time, right? If not,
over 20 years, yes.
Yeah. So do you go, when you're writing a story, do you take a day or two and go into those neighborhoods? I know, I can't recall which story it is, but like you have a story in Hell's Kitchen. I love history as well, and I noticed that it felt to me like you do your research. So do you go spend time in the neighborhoods that you're writing about?
I do. Hell's Kitchen, I've had friends who lived there for years, so I just would be there over the years. But the East Village, that story again, Rage of Redemption and Alphabet City, I had never been to the East Village. It was just a subway ride away, but New York City is very large. So I took a day off from work back when I had a day job in the late 90s. And I walked around and it was all co-ops and it was cleaned up, and I needed it to be gritty with graffiti and used condoms on the sidewalk and strewn syringes. So I just had to enhance it for my purposes. But I did walk around East Village, yes. I mean, I love research. You never know what you'll find. I also research different weapons my characters use. I have several stories with guns, and someone called me out because I forget which gun it was, but I said that particular gun had a safety, and then a savvy reader either came up to me at a convention or somewhere and said, yeah, that's not right. So,
yeah, I've found that readers are very particular about guns if you mention them.
Yes.
Yeah. So, we're in Colorado, so
I've had that too.
I'm going to probably make people angry, but I'm a gun owner. And I like going to the range. So, but yeah, people are very particular about guns in books. I've noticed that. That's kind of an interesting thing. So I try not to write about them because I like them and I shoot them, but I really don't know that much about them specifically. So I don't want to get anybody upset.
Which gun do you shoot? See, I've never been to a shooting range, a gun range.
Well, we have several guns. And so it just kind of depends on what we're doing. Actually, rifles and skeet shooting are my favorite.
Cool.
So I haven't done it for a while, just because of stupid COVID. But one of my kids is in law enforcement, so she gets to shoot all these really cool guns. So if I have gun questions, I usually just ask her to make sure that I'm not going to make a fool of myself somewhere.
Well, it's convenient. Yeah, you don't even have to get sucked into the rabbit hole of Googling on the internet. You can just go straight to the source.
That's right. My son-in-law is a big collector as well, so he's got an extensive gun collection. So, and he knows all the history of these guns and where they all came from. I'm like, I just know that I like to shoot them because it's fun.
Nice.
So, Amy, I know that you write in horror and crime. What kind of drew you to those two genres? I mean, crime and horror in my mind are always somewhat linked together, just because they're both scary. What drew you to those genres?
I grew up reading Stephen King. Well, I started reading his novels at the age of 12 when my parents' brother and I went to visit an aunt who lives in Kingston, New York one weekend. And she handed me Cujo and Pet Sematary, and she said, "Oh, honey, I think you'll like these books." And my parents didn't say no, which was awesome, because from there on out, I was really hooked on horror. I also loved Halloween as a kid. In grade school, we had they called it a ragamuffin parade. So one year I wanted to be an octopus, and my father took one of those big boxes, like washing machine box, but smaller because I was a kid, and he somehow changed it from being rectangular to round, and we painted it black with like silver outlines, and it had the eye holes and nose hole and the mouth hole, and the bottom was even had like looked like tentacles and armholes, and so it was just very very exciting to it's sort of a form of escapism, and also horror has so many layers, if you will. There's splatterpunk. I've written some splatterpunk. I've also written some ghost stories. Then you can drill down even further. Most of my characters, though, are someone you might encounter in real life, and obviously my antagonists are people you wouldn't want to have cross your path. But just because horror is an emotion, that's what really drew me to horror. And then crime fiction, I wanted to challenge myself. I started writing and publishing crime fiction in 2015. I started publishing horror in the mid-90s, shortly after college. I went to Ithaca College, majored in English and minored in creative writing. Just want to unplug my laptop 1 sec, sorry. And then, of course, I stumbled upon Discovery ID. Lieutenant Joe Kenda and all those great shows.
Oh, yeah,
and,
I love those.
Some of those crimes that they reenact are downright terrifying, probably because they really happened in real life. I also have a second crime novella. I just sent it to a publisher, so my lips are sealed as to who, but it's based on a real-life crime that happened in Park Slope in Brooklyn, where I used to live. And basically what happened, this young woman was coming home alone at 2 a.m. When I was younger, I might stay out that late, but now that I'm older, I usually call the night around midnight and head home, around midnight, 1 a.m., maybe 11 if I'm tired. But this young man who happened to be Hispanic came up behind her and tried to mug her, and he stuck I think it was a 38 in the small of her back, and she managed to get away without getting hurt or mugged. But that could happen to me, so that was the starting point for my other crime novella. I don't want to reveal the title. I don't want anyone else to steal it. But it was a really fun one to write.
Ooh, I'm looking forward to that one.
Mm-hmm.
I will keep my eyes out for that. I have a file folder that I just, when I come across a weird or gruesome news story, I will print it out and stick it in there.
Uh-huh.
And if I need inspiration, I'll look at that. Well, okay, I'm going to be honest. It's not always just for inspiration. Sometimes I'll just look through it for fun.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And then that's a good place to get inspiration.
Yes. And actually, now that we're talking about it, I have another story that was published in the early 2000s not early 2000s, 2015, 2016, in an anthology called Fright. The story's called Snow Angel, and it was an all-female anthology. All the other authors were women as well. So that was pretty awesome. And really briefly, that real-life story was that this husband and wife had a daughter who had cystic fibrosis, so she was stuck in a wheelchair. And I set it around Christmas time. and the father wants to put her out of her misery, and the mother's, not having it. But what the father does is takes her out to the backyard first, and he makes a snow angel, and he makes it look like her. He takes food coloring. The little girl has blonde hair, and then he puts her in their van, and he rigs up the exhaust with the hose, so it's gonna fill up the van with carbon monoxide, and she's gonna pass away peacefully. And I'm not a parent myself, but I've read it at several readings in real life, and parents in the audience were like, "Oh my God, you really got me with that one." So that means I did my job.
Yes, that's right. That sounds like a great story. I haven't read that one, but I'm going to now for sure.
Thank you. Yes.
So the anthology that you were in that was all women authors, was that the one that got away? Is that
Yes, that's the other more recent anthology. I have it here. I've got the blur function on. I don't know if you can see it.
We can sort of see it, yeah.
Yeah, it's just, I do a lot of corporate Zooms too, so they like to not see your background, so that's why I've got the blur on. But sorry, you were saying, yes, it's all female authors as well, or authors who identify as female.
Perfect. Mm-hmm. I heard you on the Lovecast podcast. You did a reading from that, which was excellent. And then you just sort of talked about it for just a little bit. And one of the things that struck me is you said that in that story, you flipped the script and made a woman the bad guy. And that's something that Brenda and I have sort of touched on before and talked about in the past is some people react very negatively when the bad guy in your story or the villain is a woman. And we always are trying to uncover, what is that? Why is that? What are your thoughts on that, Amy?
Yeah, that was actually one of the panels I was on at StokerCon. We did a deep dive into that, and there's a couple of factors at play. A lot of men and women in society, but mainly men, are raised that women are supposed to be submissive, subservient, and even more so throughout history, like during the 1950s, the stereotype of the housewife who, keeps house and makes dinner, makes like a 4-course dinner, things like that. And it just does everything for her husband and her family. So when people see female characters who are villains, they become uncomfortable because it goes against what they knew growing up or what they're used to seeing in media, but not so much anymore because there's a lot of strong female characters in movies. I'm trying to think. There was or TV. AMC had that series, and I'm blanking on the name. Sandra Oh played.
Oh, Killing Eve.
Yes, thank you.
I love that show.
Yeah, me too.
I love it too.
So that's one example off the top of my head. And I mean, I think I've had a lot of fun. I've written other stories that have a female villain out of necessity, and one is called Prevention, that appeared in an anthology, actually, Hell's Grannies, Tales from the Crone, like a couple years ago. April Gray here in New York, she edits the whole Hell series, as you can see from my bio. I've had stories in a couple. But that story involves her twin sons, and one of them takes her and holds her hostage in a basement in Hell's Kitchen. It's one of my Hell's Kitchen stories. And she manages to get the upper hand, and the weapon in that story, there's two. There's one of the weapons is a knife, and the other is a her cane, her hickory walking stick. And I actually did research on how does my research was on baseball bats and like how they can just like splinter if the batter hits it the wrong way, but just right. And then so yeah, she uses her cane. She whacks her one of her sons over the head because she thinks he's the good twin, but he's the bad twin. So yeah, that was kind of it was unexpected until I finished writing it, but it was a pleasant surprise.
That's funny. Both Brenda and I have a set of twins.
Oh, really? I have a twin brother. We're fraternal. You wouldn't believe that over the years, like when we were growing up, even in high school, people would ask us, "Are we identical?" In high school, I said, "Did you listen in biology? Did you pay attention in biology class?" I said,
"Yes." You get the same questions all the time. Are they twins?
Yeah.
Are they identical? Is it hard?
Do you have 2 girls, 2 boys, or?
I have identical girls.
Oh, okay, nice.
I have fraternal girls.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah, it's always been fun.
We all have that in common.
It's weird. Yeah, mine just turned 14.
Oh wow, awesome.
Mine are 22.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right.
My babies.
Well, I'm in my 40s, but that's all I'll say. I don't want to say my exact age unless you. I guess you could find it out if you Googled.
I'm quite proud of my age. I am 53.
All right, you look younger. See, I wouldn't have guessed that. So.
Yes, I'm 53.
Right,
it's
cool.
The gray hair that throws people off, but
I think it looks good on you.
Well, thanks. Yeah. You know, I tell everybody I started going gray at 20, and I just finally came to terms with it at 50. But whatever. I forgot what I was going to say. I'm so sorry.
Okay. No, we're having fun. So it's cool.
I had a question. If I'm remembering right, StokerCon. It was my first StokerCon, so it was. I was zipping from one place to another, and
I know there were so many panels. It's good that they extended the offerings a couple of days, but by then I had to get back to my clients, so I was only looking at things at night.
Yeah,
sorry to cut you off. Yeah, so
no, I was trying to catch up too, but I think you did a panel with about dialogue, right?
Yes,
that was a great one.
And
thank you. Yeah,
I was wondering because a lot of, especially writers, are listening to this podcast. If you had any words of advice or caution or anything like that about dialogue, I find dialogue to be really fun, but to write. But I'm not always the best at it. I get a little too. I have to go in and delete a lot of.
Oh, do your characters get too chatty?
They get sometimes they get too chatty, or they're like using these words, and I'm like, you're not writing a paper for, your grad degree. You're writing a story that's supposed to be accessible to everybody. So I was just wondering if you had not only for them. I'll take any advice you can hand out too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, a couple of things. There are a lot of writers who swear by you should just use he said, she said after a character speaks, and I kind of mentally tune out when I'm reading something and that's what the author's chosen to do. I like to mix it up a little bit, at least sometimes instead of say he said, say he replied. If it's a conversation that's an active conversation, or he asked, or if it's an argument, like she retorted, just to mix it up a little bit, but don't do that all the time, if that makes sense, would be one thing. And the other great thing about dialogue is you can reveal attributes about your character. You could reveal, for example, if they have an accent, if they're from, this is, from the panel, but, if they're from Boston, like Park the Con, Harvard Yard, again, to do that maybe sparingly. You don't want it to become trite. And then some examples of great dialogue that I didn't get to mention during that StokerCon panel, just because the other panelists were also so very engaged and had a lot to offer as well, would be to read Ernest Hemingway's story, Hills Like White Elephants, I think it's called. The story's almost all dialogue, except for the first couple of paragraphs. And another story that's 100% dialogue is by Terry Bisson, and it's called They're Made of Meat. And that's a great story because the story's told through dialogue. It's just 100% dialogue.
Wow, that would be hard to write, I think.
Yes.
One of the things that happens with my dialogue is Henry Snyder, who's an editor that we work with occasionally, he says he calls it the talking head syndrome, where they're just talking, and nobody's moving or nothing's happening. It's like, oh, I do that all the time. He's like, how many times do you stand and have a conversation with somebody and nobody's fidgeting with something or, taking a drink of water or whatever? I'm like, yeah, you're right. You're right. You just don't stand there. I am going to talk to you and you will talk back to me.
Yeah, that's a good point. I like to have my characters doing things while they're talking, whether they're walking somewhere or eating or just some action. Absolutely is helpful as well. Excuse me.
Well, that's great advice, because I don't know, I get like in a groove and it seems okay, and then I start adding he said, and then I have to go back and edit that out. Luckily, especially when it's been something that's got published, I've had, like Joy was saying, we've had Henry and Holly Snyder, who are wonderful editors, go through, and they don't just edit, they are also teaching you at the same time in the comments, and stuff.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. As far as editors are concerned, they're awesome. So I know I've learned a lot from them. But
sorry to interrupt. I was
no.
just going to say, along those lines, one of our New York Horror HWA New York chapter members, Carol Geisander, she's a great author, but she's an amazing developmental editor. I'm working with her now on a project that's still under wraps, but she's editing one of my stories where it's kind of embarrassing because I have one character follow another into a room, but she's really scared. So then Carol's like, well, maybe she shouldn't follow him right away, or or I'll have her like sitting close to someone else, and then a few lines later I'll say, Jackie sat next to so and so, and then in the note Carol said, well, you already know that. So it's great to have someone who has a great eye for catching those things on your side.
Definitely, yeah. Brenda and I will trade things back and forth when we're trying to develop something, just to kind of have different sets of eyes. And we both belong to critique groups. I run a small critique group for the Denver Horror Collective here. We're doing it online right now, which is fine with me. But it's important to have other people take a look-see, because you can look at something for so long that can be really blatant things you just blind. Can't see. Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
definitely.
Exactly. I changed somebody's hair color.
Oh, in the story? Yeah.
Yeah, like
I'll change
2 paragraphs.
Eye color, and it's like, whoops.
That happens a lot. Or names, like get the name flipped or something. I don't know. Yeah, it happens. Even to the best of us, I think, at time to time.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So, Amy, I know you've been writing for a really long time. Not to make it sound like you're old, but you have been writing for a long time.
No, about half my life. So, yeah.
That's awesome. That is awesome.
Thank you.
For we have a lot of new writers that listen to us, people that kind of find us on the internet or whatever. What would you say to somebody that's just starting out or has been writing for a while, and you know how sometimes you kind of get to that point where you're like, gosh, am I on the right track? Am I supposed to be doing this? What would be your advice for them?
Definitely read a lot. Read the masters, Poe, H.P. Lovecraft. Got to get some women in there. Shirley Jackson, Joyce Carol Oates, and see what they did successfully, and then writers can use that to inspire their own work. As you were saying, Joy, critique groups, developmental editors are other great ways, and just joining great organizations like the Horror Writers Association. Sounds like you guys are both members as well.
I am actually not a member of the Horror Writers Association. I need to be. I just haven't gone to the submitting of all the paperwork. I just need to buckle down and get it done. But I keep procrastinating, which I am a professional procrastinator.
Well, when things calm down, you definitely should. I've been a member for over 25 years, and back in, I think it was 1995, when the Stoker Awards were held in New York City, and I could just hop on the subway and go. I met Harlan Ellison, and and you'll love the story. And being fresh out of college, I didn't plan my budget for the trip, and because I was at the time, I didn't live in New York City yet. I was still on Long Island, where I grew up, and just taking the train into the convention. But so long story short, I had just met Harlan Ellison, and they had the HWA T-shirts. They were red with black lettering, so I had to get one. Except I was short on cash, and they didn't take credit cards or didn't want to use mine. So Harlan Ellison shoves $5 in my hand and says, "Here, now you can buy your damn T-shirt."
That's a great
So Harlan Ellison was my T-shirt.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, StokerCon is coming to Denver next year. And
I'm aware. I'm hoping to go. Yes.
My goal is to get all my paperwork in and be a bona fide member before I attend. But I already have my tickets bought. I'm ready to go.
Good. Yeah, you have some time
before it happens. So, like I said, I'm just a procrastinator, the worst procrastinator on the face of the planet. But
no, we all procrastinate. I mean, and it's summer, so a lot of people are trying to take it easy as much as they can.
Yeah, it's good to take a break sometimes, right? I will definitely get it done, because I follow all of the stuff that they do, and have been to the StokerCon, and I think somebody, the Colorado Springs chapter does some things, and I've been virtually to some of those things, and I'm like, why am I just not a member? I don't know. I'm just a lurker.
Yeah, you lurker, you.
Creepy. So Amy, we would really love it if you would share some of your writing with our listeners. If you would like to read a piece, that would be fantastic.
We would love that.
I will read the beginning of my story in The One That Got Away. Let me grab a drink of water real quick. I've got bad allergies, and all the pollen is out there. So.
Yeah, it's bad here too for pollen and wildfire smoke every summer anymore. We just like inundated with wildfire smoke. So
yeah, we're getting the Arizona smoke.
Yeah,
and the cottonwoods are throwing off stuff. So.
Do you guys live near the wildfires? I hope not.
No, Brenda might be kind of close to the Arizona one.
I'm near the New Mexico border, but we actually just had a fire spark up. Kind of about 40 miles north, I guess it'd be northwest of us. A new one just sparked up, so they're watching it now.
Wow.
So crossing my fingers. It really gets scary sometimes.
Yeah. Kind of typical this time of the year. They pop up here and there, and then I heard a thunderstorm roll through, and that's when you kind of
get nervous.
Start watching the Twitter and whatever to see if something happens.
The lightning can strike a tree, and that could ignite a fire. I didn't think of that.
Yeah.
Mother Nature. She can be a real bitch.
Right? Here I said New York City was scary.
Yeah.
Yeah, and wildfires are nothing to laugh at, that's for sure.
No.
Okay. So here we go. Cold comfort. Jack Masick woke with a start and flinched when he felt someone resting next to him on the spacious bed in a strange bedroom. Everything here had a place, including him. He waited anxiously for his eyes to adjust to the darkness while he tried to make sense of it all. Jack looked around and groaned when he realized where he was. Another strange woman's apartment, much larger and neater than his cramped studio. Waking up in strange places next to women he hardly knew had become a kinky rut, purely spontaneous, especially if he'd been drinking. He thought for a moment, struggling to recall the woman's name. Lately, they'd become a random jumble of desire, fueled by his insatiable libido. A moment later, it came to him, Sadie O'Grady. It fit her perfectly, given her bright red hair and wild temperament. Such an unusual combination of remarkable beauty and unbridled passion fascinated him and left him helpless against her charms. They met at Mango's, a tropical bar nearby. Hazy smoke lingered, dense and brooding, creating a hypnotic ambiance. Lou Reed crooned sweetly in the background. Lust filled the tight, dark space, oozing across the bar like precious gold, yearning to be tasted. Jack drank in the crowd, admiring the bevy of beauties ripe for the picking, dressed in alluring outfits that clung in all the right places, accentuating choice cleavage and other valuable assets. That's when he caught a glint of metal out of the corner of his eye and snapped out of his daze long enough to remember his wedding ring, a simple silver band on his right ring finger weighing him down. He slipped it off discreetly. Jack held it tightly in his palm for a moment and felt it grow warm before slipping it into his pants pocket. He should have stopped wearing it by now, with Mary gone 6 months, but her hasty departure still gnawed at him, a bone of contention. He had been drinking apricot sours, numbing the pain, staring at his third glass, trying to decide if it was half empty or half full, when she appeared, an unanswered prayer, and sauntered over to the only empty bar stool left in the place like she owned it. Her perfume, sweet and light like lilacs, captivated his senses, reminding him of happier days. The girl wore an emerald green sleeveless dress that left little to the imagination. One look at her, and he knew he wouldn't be going home to his lonely studio apartment chock full of bad memories. You look thirsty. Jack rested his foot on the lower rung of the bar stool and lost himself in her intense green eyes. What are you drinking? He asked, slurring his words. Nothing yet. I just got here. She rubbed his leg with the tip of her shoe and watched him shudder. I have a girlfriend. He shoved her away and frowned apologetically. Then why isn't she here? Lovers quarrel? No, Amy had to work tonight, so I decided to go out. I need to clear my head. I've got too much on my mind lately. He stared at his half-empty glass. Almost time for a refill. I'm glad you came. She ran her fingers across the bar. Make yourself useful. Buy me a drink. If you insist. Jack smiled, looked her over, and forgot about Amy for a while. Pick your poison. A zombie, she whispered, her breath hot and quick in his ear. I could just eat you up. The girl licked her pink lips slowly while he watched. Is that a threat or a promise? He rested his hand on his chin. You'll find out. You'll soon find out. She twirled a lock of curly red hair. What's your name, sweet thing? Oops. Okay. Jack gasped, polished off his drink for courage, and slammed his empty glass down on the bar. Jack Masick. He leaned forward and extended a large bony hand. And who might you be? Sadie O'Grady, like I said. She shook it. Her grip was firm, warm. The pleasure's all mine. Sadie gave his hand a sudden bone-crushing squeeze. He winced and felt his knuckles pop under the strain. Wow, that's quite a grip you've got there. You caught me by surprise. Jack bit his lip, stifling a scream. Thanks, I work out. A single girl's got to protect herself. This is a tough town. It will swallow you whole if you're not careful. Sadie released his hand and let her eyes wander slowly up and down his slender physique. What's a cute young guy like you doing alone in a dive like this? There is a first, he thought, amused by her daring overture. It's ladies' night, Jack chuckled. I'm here to buy drinks for lovely ladies like you. She shook her finger at him. I doubt your girlfriend would approve. I promise not to tell. Sadie folded her arms. Have you bought anyone drinks yet? You're the first girl to pique my interest. He waved the burly bartender over and ordered a zombie for her and another apricot sour for himself. Amy would have a fit if she found out I was here, Jack winked. You've got spunk and you're brutally honest. You're a rare find. Amy's a very lucky girl, Sadie grinned. She takes me for granted. Jack blushed and took a final swig of his apricot sour. Where do you live? You're not East Side material, I can tell. You're way too rough around the edges. He examined his throbbing hand and found no harm done. I'm from the West Side. I haven't figured out how to blend in. Maybe you could teach me? I'm a fast learner. I'd be glad to show you the ropes for a price. Her foot inched higher, grazing his thigh. Jack shivered in anticipation. Name it. Your pride. Can you handle that, Jack? Sadie shrugged. He snickered, relieved. Sure, I've got plenty to spare. Consider yourself lucky. I'm feeling generous tonight. It's a rare occurrence. She ran her fingers across the bar. What brings you to this side of town? Looking for someone new? He felt the crotch of his jeans tighten instantly. Maybe, if the right girl comes along. Am I the right girl? She placed her hand between her plump breasts and watched his dark blue eyes settle there. Absolutely. Jack smirked, raised his glass, and polished off his drink. This half of the city seems less crazed. Sadie nodded. It is, and that makes it really dull if you ask me. A girl has to search hard for excitement. Isn't it worth the extra effort? He raised his eyebrows. She shrugged. Sometimes. Jack looked her up and down. You look luscious. Sadie licked her lips again. Are you hungry? I'm ravenous. He nodded, thrilled by dumb luck. God, you're gorgeous. She laughed long and hard. God has nothing to do with it. Fair enough. Jack smiled expectantly. The bartender set their drinks on the bar. Jack handed him a 20 and a 10 from his tattered wallet. Sadie hoisted her enormous glass. Here's to chance encounters. I'll drink to that. He raised his glass, spilling some on the bar. She plucked the cherry from the zombie and lowered it into her mouth slowly. Intrigued, Jack looked on. What are you up to later tonight? He gulped down the rest of his apricot sour and dabbed his mouth with the cocktail napkin. She drank her zombie. That depends. On what? Jack stared at her intently. What you have to offer, Sadie winked. The sumptuous shape next to him stirred in the darkness, and his cock betrayed him once more. Mary. No, it couldn't be. Groggy, Jack opened his eyes and studied the woman beside him, disappointed to discover she wasn't his wife, Mary. No, it was only Sadie, his latest conquest, another momentary lapse of reason. Glad you're finally up. I wondered when you were going to come around. Sadie wrapped her arms around him and squeezed. You passed out. I guess I got carried away. I get lost in the moment. Sometimes I don't know my own strength. He draped an arm across her shoulder. Yeah, you really wore me out. You're amazing. You bring out the best in me. She nuzzled his neck. Jack felt his soft skin bruise under the strain. Tomorrow he'd look like someone who'd gone 6 rounds in a prize fight and lost. Hey, Jack, know what I love about you? Sadie wrapped her arms around him and held them tight. Let me guess, is it my boyish charm? Or it's my best feature? Jack squirmed, trying to get comfortable, but failing miserably. The more he moved, the harder she squeezed, just to remind him that, ready or not, he belonged to her now. There you go.
That was great.
Thank you. You'll have to read the rest. The book's available online at Amazon, BarnesandNoble.com, and more recently, Walmart.
Oh, right
wow.
On.
Yes.
I will find that. That's awesome.
That's the only store we have.
Oh, we're big time. We have a Target too.
Oh yeah, I love Target. I haven't been in over a year just because of COVID, but soon I'll get back. I've been to Walmart. Didn't see the book there yet, but I was shopping with my mom. So.
Oh, that's neat. That's really fun.
Yeah. Thank you.
I'll be looking for that one for sure.
Awesome. Yeah, I hope you enjoy it.
So it sounds like you have a few other things coming down the pike as well, and we'll keep our eyes out for that, Amy.
Yes.
Amy, we want to keep track of all these things that are happening with you. Where can we and listeners and viewers find you and your work?
I have a website. It's crimsonscreams.com. And I'm very active on Twitter, and I'm just Amy_Grech at Twitter.
Perfect. And we'll put all of that in the show notes as well.
Excellent.
Amy, we really can't thank you enough for joining us. This has been a big fangirl moment for me. I'm a big, huge fan of yours. I love you so much and your stuff.
Thank you. Thank you again for having me.
Yeah.
This was a blast.
Oh, I'm glad you enjoyed yourself.
I did.
As usual, I can be found at joyyaley.com. And Brenda, where are you?
I'm at brendatolian.com. And yes, thank you so much, Amy, for coming on. We just have been fangirling, just couldn't wait to have you on. So this has been huge for us. So thank you. And thank you for reading that wonderful story.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah.
That's awesome.
So everybody listening, go get copies of Amy's stuff. You will not be disappointed. I guarantee it. And thank you, listeners and watchers, for joining us one more time on The Burial Plot. Until next time, stay above ground.